There we go. Okay, cool, man. Um, so let's get dangerous. All right, so in my charts, we are opening up, gap up. I'll draw this thing here real quick to give
I
us.
can't see you yet.
Oh,
Are
you
you gonna?
can't. Right, right, right. I gotta share my screen. Yes, yes. There we go. Okay. So just to draw this out, only because I think it helps me. I'll go as far back as this day. Just drawing these things out here, major pivot movements, and there you go, and then basically like that. So you look at that, you're like, well, is it just gonna go higher, Nick? Yeah, well, it might, but I'm expecting a pullback, right? This just to me this seems reasonable, and even that seems very reasonable. So, anyways, just it helps me decide what my theories are on the day. Number one is gap and continue. So gap and go says there there is no pullback. There's no repositioning whatsoever. The market just takes off. It's pulled back enough and it just goes. Gap and continue says we pull back up into as far as the half gap, maybe a little bit further, and then we make a new high off of that pullback. Anything other than those two things puts us in a separate scenario. That means we're probably going to balance. We may balance, or we may break down the balance and fill the gap. Now, a balance breakdown means that there was some sort of fight. It wasn't just an instantaneous move off the highs or whatever, and continuing into some sort of gap close or attempt to close the gap. So all hard to read. Pretty substantial gap on things that I'm not sure. I don't even know if there was news. Did you know if there's some kind of news that caused this?
No, I don't think so.
Is ES in a similar place? Is it gapped up as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, good. Look, my ESPP happens this like tomorrow, so yeah, this is great for me. You know what I'm saying? I really would like to see this like cruise to all new highs so that I can cash in my ESPP tomorrow. That'll be great. Anyway, long story short, I've got two basic scenarios, and I want to pull something up that first time using this, but I want to make a
Oh, I
comment.
did one of those too.
Yeah, yeah, but check this out. Like where are sellers? So first of all, what you're looking at is that incomplete auctions are these blue lines. So
Oh, that's
where
right.
are sellers trapped? First place that I see them trapped is right here.
Yep.
Yep. And then you got an incomplete auction. So the auction wants to go back there and finish up its business there. So, well, guess where that puts us? That, my friend, puts us right here, right? You see this these green lines, those are called floor lines for my indicator. But between that and the low volume or the lower KLVN of this balance area, that's right where that area is. So yeah, I think I'm expecting a response there. And the response I'm expecting is in the gap and continue scenario where I'm going to see an impulse reversal. Let's just talk about that for a second. So what that means is the market comes down strong. And as it comes down strong, you get a bounce and a pullback like that. But what's happening in the delta is something very interesting. You see big delta move down and then less and then less and then almost nothing and then it flips. And then you see a big pace of bid hit and then nothing. It just completely goes away. And then the next thing we'd expect to see is that on this up leg, a big move higher and then we retest, we get an imbalance. That's the perfect situation. That's exactly what we want, where we would see impulse reversal, a buy imbalance, seller pace of bid exhaustion, polarity shift on the cumulative delta. I'll just point out a polarity shift right quick. So we see one. That's a polarity shift. That's where we went from selling to buying, right? We want that.
Mhm.
There's one. So we want all those signs in this area. And if we see that, then that's a gap and continue scenario underway. And the expectation is that we would make a new high. What happens after that? Don't know. Now, if buyers are super aggressive or the auction does this fake out thing, and I love that word, Nick, that you use it all the time. If the buyer auction does this fake out thing where it just does not pull back at all and it just continues, as we drew in the higher time frame, as an extraordinarily um, long move. And at least for my sake, the things that I'm seeing, I don't see any delta to support that. It doesn't, like the participation isn't there. Action,
Hmm.
location, participation. So action is that we've impulsed. We're imbalanced on value. That's true, but the delta isn't there to confirm. So kind of looks a little bit scary in my view. So what that might look like is they attempt higher, but we start to see a sell imbalance. We don't see a new high a day. We start to see, like, kind of a weird auction thing where it's just around and around and around, not really going anywhere, sucking as many longs in as it can before it ultimately just starts to get absorbed and roll over. And that would look like having that absorption negative delta on the 1 minute chart, something like that. Right now, it's kind of both directions. You can see it right now where it's we're getting polarity shifts. So to me, this looks like, maybe, I don't know, I'm making this up. Maybe it's light volume. I'm not sure, but it's not like completely absorbed to one side. And you can usually, what you see in that situation is something like this, but it doesn't let up, and in this case it did. So that's kind of interesting. But
Mm.
this is these are the signals that we'd be looking for to try and potentially get short this massive gap move here. So if we start to see what looks like balance because they're too aggressive and they just don't have the gas, plane runs out of RPMs and momentum and just starts to roll over, we should see that sell imbalance, no new high a day, absorption with negative delta, a wave imbalance, three stooges. We should see those descending volume and delta signals, and then what we would expect is it to test back into this area where we do see trapped buyers or sellers, excuse me, and then that'll produce a reaction. And if that reaction is not enough, then I expect us to roll over even further, break the overnight low, and attempt to close the gap. Buyer, we're in a bullish environment though, so we can't. The only thing I'll say, and as a warning to myself, is that even if we do see a strong move, it doesn't necessarily mean the gap's going to close because of the environment that we're actually in. So, long story short, those are the two major plays I'm looking for at the start of the morning.
Yeah. My look is the same, except for one thing I just want to remind you about is that because it's rollover, all the delta and the volume numbers are going to be a little bit skewed because
Oh,
there's positions, right? So let's say if you're a hedge fund or you're a big fund and you're short 1,000 contracts, okay? So what are you going to be doing? You're going to be buying the December contracts and selling the March contracts to move your position into March, and that's going to damper delta. And that doesn't happen very often. I mean, this is where they're just rolling a position from one place to another. So just be at least until like probably Wednesday or Thursday, you got to be careful reading delta too much. Too like so that might account for the dampering of this up move.
I
That's all
see.
I'm saying.
I see. Yeah. So maybe on the higher time frame, it's not as significant in terms of what it does or doesn't mean.
It might, yeah, that could
Um,
be.
okay. Cool. I just realized something here that I've like always, I jack up my plans. We weren't even looking at the right screen on the OBS. Whatever. So
Really?
all that, just you saw it, but the video didn't. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, I saw it for sure.
But anyways, I explained it, and here it is. So there you go. All right.
All right. Are you getting spinning dice? Looks like
Mm,
it.
give me a second. Yes,
Wait,
spinning dice. Wow, so frustrating.
stay with me. Let me try this again.
Got it.
Okay. So, um, very similar to you. of the type of thinking that's going on here. I was just going to point out that we developed this point of control right there. And just to kind of give perspective to that, if you look at the daily chart, which is this, right? This is the last 10 days or so. This point of control right there at 59.50. And by the way, I'm in the front month now. I'm in the March. I don't know if
I
you,
rolled over too.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we're now over the volume that was created, in the down session and in the day that followed, which is really right here. The down session, the overnight that followed, that balancing session, then we tested down, and now we gapped over this. And so the way I'm reading that is that gap is similar to a impulse. It is, pretend it's like this. Boop.
Yep.
And we just impulse through all of this structure right there that was starting to look like this volume point might be breaking down, right? Because we did get an impulse down from that move
Hmm.
in the overnight session. And then we made a higher low in the day session on Friday. And then we impulsed. And then in the overnight session, basically, we impulsed through. We've checked back to here. And now we're up here. Okay. So it doesn't look overly strong, just like you. I mean, there's the delta for ES on this front month. It doesn't look great, but I'm attributing that to be partially that rollover situation. So my initial thought is for the day, as long as we're above this area, 59 and a quarter, which is this point of control that kind of comes in right here. As long as we're above that, my bias is going to start to stay on the bullish side. But I do expect, just like you, some sort of a pullback. I would probably not expect a deep pullback, but I'm going to use, some of the near-term information that you and I both look at for volume scope and delta and things like that as much as we can today to kind of determine, the kind of support we're going to get. But my first thought would be is that we get a pullback to about the mid, maybe push through it a little bit, muck around in here a little bit, and then try to get some buying going, and we push up. And where would we go? This 3682 level is the balance right here. Okay, so this is the upper area of this point of control. So I would expect to have a little bit of a resistance there, which is what we're experiencing in the overnight session. But we break through that, and then you have 3,700 on the docket. And then, of course, the all-time highs are right up there as well. So my initial targets are going to be up in this zone here, which is from 92 to 96 initially, and I'm hoping to get a pullback around the mid that I can get long. If that long goes out on the initial pullback to the mid, if that goes out, I would expect that this low area here does support the day. If we start to go through this and we start down in here, it's going to be a much more balanced session overall. I would expect that we probably don't even make new highs if that's the case. And we balance in this area. But for the most part, again, I think the bulls are backing total control. I'm taking this move overnight as a gap, as an impulse away through all this. And in the bigger picture, that's pretty bullish.
So the one thing that I didn't cover, it's in my mind, and it's also here in your charts as well. If the sell, so we're at a lower high scenario, potentially a head and shoulders scenario against the all-time
Okay.
highs. So if the
Yes.
sellers take over immediately and the
Mm-hmm.
test of the half gap doesn't, or the test of your structure area, wherever you put it, doesn't hold, it doesn't create a new high a day, then that is one scenario where I would be more willing to risk shorts uh, in that situation if I saw such a strong,
Okay.
violent reaction up front, right away. Like it can't be just we're wiggling around, we kind of make a high, then we don't. It's like yeah, boom, impulse off the open.
Yeah. And then something like this, and then I would expect that you go back down to this point of control that kind of was formed here, and this double distribution that happened, and you're basically testing this entire breakout from here up
Right.
if you do that. But I got to be honest, I don't expect that to be the case.
Yeah, yeah. Neither do I.
It's the unlikely scenario, not the impossible scenario, because we both know nothing is impossible. But it's not the likely scenario of today. If we were going to do that kind of action and the Bears were enough in control, we wouldn't have gotten this overnight gap, and we wouldn't have gotten this balance like this. We would have gotten an overnight gap that gets pushed away right away if the Bears really seem to have something.
Right. Right.
So
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's stop this.